Thank you, Christian. Of course, also this presentation will be available in PDF on our website, and the coalition is improving and improving. They have big plans, there is a website, so we will be instrumental in giving you, Christian, a link to additional supporting person. And now comes, before lunch, comes the pleasure to having my shareholder, my members, who, some of them at least, who will join me in this panel discussion. Dr. Venturini, Dr. Beni, Dr. Rebaudengo, Matteo Codazzi, and Matteo del Fante from Terna. So the idea, I sit down in the first chair, and the other one follows me, and we go under this discussion. Grande. Ah, sorry. Dove vuoi? Free sitting. Free sitting. Yes. If you go very far, I do easy question. If you go too close, you're in danger, Matteo.
Too close to the sun.
It's
dangerous.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much. I think the Fante is arriving in a second. Well, at this point in time, I have the privilege to moderate my main shareholder of RES4MED. So, well, we have been hearing the introduction, the core of the Egyptian one. I'm sure you already have your opinion on what you were proposed to, but nevertheless, thank you for coming. Yes, please. Welcome to Dr. Fante from Terna. I have a first question, of course, for the host and my president, Venturini. You heard about the Egyptian ambitious plan, the even more complicated scheme, and you rightly put a question to my friend Professor Sobki. Now, Enel Wind Power, which is present in so many countries, decided, of course, to go to the Mediterranean, and after Morocco, now in Egypt. What are the motivations and what are the pros and cons you see in addressing such a challenging market like Egypt?
I think there are only pros and very little cons. Egypt, in Egypt lives 50% of the population of North Africa, substantially. 90 million, more or less, persons versus 180 million living in all the on the coast. It's a very fast-growing economy with, as we have seen, important energy needs. For us, the African market is divided between sub-Saharan countries and the coast of the Mediterranean. And we have two different strategies for the south and the north. The south, we started with South Africa, and then we're trying to go up. There are very interesting business models that are being created actually in that part of the world, and we are monitoring with a lot of attention. North Africa is definitely an important market. I think we are now looking at Morocco with a lot of interest. We are looking at Egypt. The fact that Egypt has the opportunity of participating at tenders at the same time participating at the feed-in tariff is a great model, actually. It gives me the opportunity to lose tenders and then go back and try to gain something with the feed-in tariff, or the other way. And I think that there is going to be also interesting development in Algeria and Tunisia. So it's a combination between good economic conditions, a strong regulatory system. As we have seen, the progress made under the regulatory point of view has been incredible, honestly. And I have to say that also they probably learned a lot of lessons from some mistakes that we made in Europe in the past.
Thank you, Francesco. Now,
I hope so, at least.
Next question to Giuseppe. You were mentioned probably you're been in Egypt many years with the patient, with the big brother pushing there. Now, what is your several years experience? How do you see this today outcome? It's finished, or it's a long process still? Be frank.
No,
doesn't have to be a long way still to go, because we've been working, and as Francesco was mentioning, we are at least as flexible as Enel Green Power. So, but we started with a different rationale. So we started as an industrial player already in Egypt. So you know that Italgen is part of Italcementi Group, and Italcementi Group is one of, through Suez Cement Group of Company, is one of the major investors in Egypt. Therefore, the energy issue, since we are an energy-intensive business, is something that we touch every day, especially when we have power cuts, that's a very strong headache, especially for my colleague. Therefore, the experience, just to go back to your question, Roberto, is that I fully agree. They made a lot of work. They made a lot of improvements. We have been, I wouldn't say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we provided a lot of contribution in order to establish this roadmap that I was seeing in one slide today. You should put also Italgen as a copyright. But I think that is the right moment, so I fully agree. So we were in Sharm el-Sheikh, we were all unbelievably impressed by the leadership of President Sisi and for the commitment that they have in this issue of the energy. So therefore, my answer is that definitely Egypt is back in terms of leadership, in terms of commitment, and my suggestion is to okay, the flexibility, but now let's try to finalize all the different options in order to have project implemented. So to have, I know that we have been there for a while, and I know that we invested a lot of time and resources in order to do something, that is, I would say, outstanding in terms of methodology and bankable. So now it's time to start with the construction, as we did, but we would like to speed it up.
Can I also add something to you? After Tarek, you said, Tarek, there were 2 years very dark in a way. But I was impressed when you always say, Roberto, even when Egypt was undergoing a transition, there was no problem in terms of payment, in terms of responding from the government, in terms of involving the investors. Was that correct?
Let's say that we, during the, as I said before, we were there before the revolution, we were there during the revolution, and we are here after the revolution. So we have a complete flexibility. And as I said, we have 5 cement plants there. We have 5,000 colleagues working in Egypt. Therefore, to us, Egypt is a very relevant country. Therefore, of course, the reference was not as, I have to say, that is much easier today than some years ago. But I have to say that the main reference person are, I'm thinking of Egyptera and even the ministry we are dealing with, they are there, and I would say that they have been committed since before the revolutions. Now they are delivering more.
Hope so. Agostino Rebaudengo is, in this case, the first question is the president of assoRinnovabili, the largest, by far, and most powerful association of more than 1,000 operators. So how do you see today outcomes or ongoing outcomes vis-a-vis the need, your priority to push our industry to finally go abroad to make things happen, taking advantage of the track record, but also taking advantage of the opportunity as assoRinnovabili?
Yes, I think that they like today are very important, because it's an opportunity to exchange ideas, understand more deeply the opportunity that, for example, we are speaking today about Egypt, we can have for Italian industry in your country. And this, I think that for sure also for an association of producers like us is very important, and is also for this reason that we decide to join from day probably 1 or 2 to RES4MED, because it's very important to be close to an organization like RES4MED that can help to bring all the information and the the contact with the key people in the country in which there are opportunity for renewable, and of course that means opportunity for our members of assoRinnovabili. So again, Vigotti, I think, Roberto, I think that it's very important organize this kind of meetings and discussion. And for sure, I think that this will help Italian industry to be in your country and to be active there.
Thank you. By the way, we are going to come to Egypt in September. I can anticipate we will organize the RES4MED Day mid-September in Cairo, and definitely many of you will be asked to come, and you kindly will support us in putting a matching meeting with the counterpart. Dr. Fante, welcome here. Dr. Fante is the CEO of Terna. The infrastructure is so important, and however, when we talk about renewable deployment, people always talk about megawatt solar PV, and they forget to remember that, as Stracci did this morning, that unless you have an infrastructure who can convey, evacuate, optimize, so there is a 90% of the talk is about cost, about performance of the power system, and very little on network. Now you have an opportunity to stress the importance of network in this case.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, to Enel and to RES4MED for the opportunity to be here today. Yes, we think transmission and infrastructure networks are important, and I think Terna, in this specific space, on the back of many years of investments in Italy, have learned and has a know-how that now we want to make available to other countries. So we have invested almost 10 billion euro in the Italian grid, so we have done many projects. Italy has a very various geographical space, so we have still the world record for the submarine connection with Sardinia. We have gone through very high mountains, cliffs, so we have done tunnels, everything possible, and we have clearly zones where the sun is also very strong in Italy too. And the idea with Enel, so we welcome the opportunity, and we are clearly supporting from our standpoint the effort of Enel in green power in Egypt. The idea is that clearly on the most competitive basis possible, when you do a production plan, you need to connect it. And we want to candidate ourselves to be, and green power is extremely good for what we have seen in the first few projects, are choosing the best project in terms of technical and price. And we have the ambition to give a support and to create the basis for cooperation where Terna does the network. And if I can say one last comment, often, and this is clearly not the case when you have many different production plants, but where you have regions where you need to plan in advance the 20, 30, 50 year energy, doing a deep thinking about the network together with the production saves probably investment and optimizes. We're looking at one specific project where we are together with the help of also Cesi. We're comparing the opportunity of producing in one spot and then bringing energy with the grid around the country, or extracting gas in that specific spot, bringing gas around the country and then producing locally, and we're doing the trade-off and this kind of early planning. We believe that in many countries is important, and we are available to give our technical support for that as well.
Thank you. Of course, you mentioned Cesi. It was on my list, of course. And thank you, Matteo, for being here, the CEO of Cesi. Cesi is well known in the Arab world, in the Arab League, and particularly in Egypt, for the outstanding work on network planning. Matteo, it was mentioned before by Paolo, everybody, that the difficulty of integrating variable, intermittent, let's say, resources. Now, what is your opinion? Where Cesi made the assessment of the Egyptian network per se, and of course later I will ask you about interconnection. What is your feeling? Is the Egypt going in parallel with development of renewable and other plants as much as for the system?
Well, I think there is one statement that applies to Egypt and any other countries, and the statement is, no grid, no party. Renewables are great, of course, but the key enabling factor is, of course, the grid. I think Mr. Del Fante has rightly said so. As Cesi, we are the engineering and technical consulting arm of Enel and Terna. We operate in 40 countries, and we followed the Middle East. We serve the Middle East market both from our offices in Milan and from our offices in Dubai. Well, I think in our mind, one of the top two issues for a renewable project not meeting its return targets is perhaps problems with the interconnection, problems with unreliable interconnection, problems with curtailment, etc., etc. Now, running a grid at 5% renewables is a relatively easy task, but running a grid with as high as 50% renewable is a damn of a job. And I think some of the European countries, including Italy, are well aware of the problems and the issues that are related to this. Now, there are in particular two issues that I would like to highlight. One is the issue of location. Well, as you all know, renewable is abundant, but typically renewable resources are not necessarily located where the grid is located. So there is an issue of bringing the grid in the place where renewable resources are abundant, and this is an issue both for the transmission system operator. So I think Dr. El Sobki has rightly said so in his speech, and also a problem if you are an operator. We have been working in Egypt with Italgen, working in particular helping them in devising the best route, the best interconnection with the rest of the grid. We have to remember that in Egypt, the main transmission backbone is along the Nile River, whilst the most and the best places for renewable are typically on the Red Sea. So one issue is locations. Second issue is actually the pattern, all right? So the kind of flexibility that you need to bring into the system in order to accommodate such a huge scale of renewables. You need flexibility in terms of thermal generation plant. You need flexibility, or you might be needing flexibility in terms of storage renewables. You might be needing flexibility in terms of interconnections. So there is only one keyword, and I'm concluding. And I think as far as flexibility is concerned, my recommendation would be to plan well in advance. I think there is, I don't see here Paolo Frank, but I think, Paolo, I think there is a study that you made. I can't remember exactly what was the percentage, but I think close to 30%. So you can decrease by 30% the cost of integrating renewables into a power system if you take certain decisions and if you plan well in advance, so that you are able to take optimal capex, optimal investment decisions. So as Cesi, we have the tools, we have know-how, we have the experience. We made these references and know-how available both to the investors in the area and to the governments and the transmission system operators. We're here and we are able and willing to support the operators in this market. Thank you.
Thank you, Matteo, for this first answer. I go back to my president, Francesco. I'd like to ask you, what is your opinion on the advantage that Egypt could benefit from having a participation to tender of such a, in competition, of course, a large international operator, and particularly, I mean, last week you got back from South Africa with 450 megawatt, I think. Then I understand you're building PV 250 megawatt in Chile, so on. What's the difference? Is Egypt the same, or when you go there, it's a different country? Because I know there are criteria for you to go there, but is Egypt a particular one, or you reproduce your model there?
Our model is the same worldwide. Then needs to be deployed locally, and obviously rules are different, and we need to be able to win the tenders locally. I think that we need to deal with the big elephant in the room today. And Paolo, I think that you need to update your slide regarding prices around the world. Yesterday, I think that the results of the 250 megawatt tender came out. And I think that we have probably a new record price worldwide. So congratulations to Egypt. At the same time, you are making my life and the life of the people working with me extremely challenging. So if I go back to your question, what is different in Egypt? That I think they opened a completely new world, especially for wind. A world that we need to face, because at the end, competition is what we like. Competition is what we deal for every day. I remember we always joke about this with my team. When we win a tender, people look at us and they say, "Hey, they slashed the prices. They went crazy. It's impossible." And then we go to the next tender, and somebody else is crazier than us. Bless them. Now it's time for us to try to understand how they did it, how it worked. But I think that all the rules that were set up in the proper way, and this is just the demonstration that Egypt came a long way. That things seem to make sense for the people competing there. As Enel Green Power, we always struggled the first time to figure out what the situation is. So I hope for a second time to show that we can do it, we can do better.
But the criteria by which these bids international are run, I remember when Antonello, we were in Abu Dhabi, we had to face Paddy there to the famous 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Is what, the cost of financing, or is operation and maintenance, or local value content? Do you have any broad idea of if those are well mixed, those factors?
I think it's all the above. The different companies or different consortiums that were part of the bid during the weekend are all important players in this sector, so they know what they're doing. I think that obviously there is an important component regarding CapEx. So prices of the equipment is going down. It's been more competitive in the way they make energy, so it's also more reliable, works better, the energy production is higher. Cost of equity is extremely important, absolutely. We have, as Enel Green Power, a low cost of equity in general, but evidently there are players that can benefit of a lower cost of equity. And then there is the attitude towards risk. So there is, I think that this is becoming more and more, a global market where there is a global pricing, although there are local rules. And we'll need to, as Enel Green Power, as a big operator in this sector, we'll need to find ways of dealing with it.
Thank you. Antonello, smile.
We cannot smile today.
No, he's tired. He said he's tired. Giuseppe, an issue is always brought around, even in Abu Dhabi, is the fact of the local value content. And still people perceive it as a tax, or is the least damage. Can you elaborate from your point of view, is it really an opportunity or is it a slogan? Because the government, of course, will encourage, even though they don't have a quota, they will encourage you local value content in any country. But it's still a discussion I had in Abu Dhabi, in the forum there, is that many of them feel, okay, we have to do that, the least damage. What's your opinion in Egypt and in Morocco, of course?
Well, I would say that in both countries, we have experienced a very relevant contribution from the local environment. And it's not a tax that we have to pay. Is, let's say, that is within the DNA of all our projects. So we have to take care of the local KPI and the local feedback. We were discussing, and just to provide you an example, very, very detailed on that, during our public hearing that we had for the first time for the first project, first private sector project in Egypt. So we were watched like coming from the moon. And I have to say that I was plenty of engineer with me ready to answer to the 0.000 something additional increase on production, as Francesco was mentioning. And in fact, all the questions were related to completely different issue, meaning how many jobs you will create, how you will impact, because as Matteo was mentioning, the location is a different location. So when you are dealing in Gabalizet area, let me say that we are in a beautiful place, but in the middle of nothing. So the grid now is there, the environment is improving, but 4 or 5 years ago was a different story. So the commitment that we have to provide to the local government is a commitment that will bring to a long-term vision, that will bring to a win-win situation. So it's not a tax. In fact, now we started with the civil work, and we started with the Egyptian company, and we are more than happy. So the content there, and again, if we see a little bit behind the construction and we enter into operation and maintenance, we need to have local people there. So that's why I think it's relevant to have connection and relation with the local university in order to have skillful people there. So I think that if we take into consideration the long-term profitability on a win-win situation, that has to be not considered as a tax for sure, but as a value added to the project.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Now back to Agostino. Agostino, your company now, Asja, is also a member of RES4MED, is involved in all renewable PV, wind, and also in Egypt as well. But you have a special skill in conversion of waste to biogas, both from urban waste and from agricultural waste, which I think is one of the assets when we go abroad in Morocco as well in Egypt. People appreciate that. Now, you may heard from an agency that Egypt is about to install more than 100 million olive trees on the west bank of Nile, I think, to reclaim the land. And so this may be also an opportunity to suggest our distinguished Egyptian guests that they can also utilize not only olive for olive per se, oil, or land reclamation, but also for the conversion. I know they have, as all the country, even starting from Italy, a huge problem with the waste management, and therefore conversion to energy may be a case. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I heard about this. I think that is a very interesting program, also because we have a lot of problem with our olives trees in Italy. So I think that it's also a tremendous market opportunity to do this kind of plantation. And as Asja, my company, we have a very large experience in landfill biogas. We are the biggest in Italy with 26 plants. And also we work in the biodigestion of the sansa, that is what is left after the squeezing of the olives. So this, I think, that can be also a great opportunity. And I would like to understand more about this also, because to understand if you think to plant olive trees or also other kind like palm oil trees to understand what you will do in terms of, let's say, agriculture plan. But for sure will be an opportunity for my company and for other companies that join assoRinnovabili.
Thank you, Dr. Del Fante. My question is more broad on the role of interconnection, because sometimes we have difficulty in who's going to pay the interconnection, even between countries, between regions, not to say between continents. Of course, you just came back from the inauguration of the cable Malta, Italy. But I remember when I was in Enel, Terna was embedded there. We had the famous cable between Greece and Brindisi, which was not done on economic terms, but was done mostly on political terms. So can you elaborate a little bit how important is in deciding the priority, even European-wise, what are the factors like a politically added value that interconnection may bring to not only to the system, but to the policy of a European?
Yeah. We're strong believers in the role of interconnections also among countries. We had our weekly meeting looking at flows of interconnection this morning, so I took the opportunity to bring some data to give a feel. But that cable with Greece in a normal week has basically exported energy. I'm talking the first week of April, basically 5 out of 7 days. And then there was the Greek Easter, which was disalign the Orthodox Easter, and surprise, surprise, the same week we export for 1 day into France. Okay. The Monday the 7th. So what does it mean to us? It means that it's hard to put a value up front on the interconnection because it's hard to see over 30, 40 years with such a changing production and consumption pattern that is very difficult to forecast. But we know that the flexibility that the connections give to countries, and also the fact that we have been working a lot as a TSO with the other colleagues in Europe in aligning the markets. So not only there are more interconnections now, but market coupling is allowing us to use better the interconnections that we have. And so we will try to push as many projects of interconnection as we can. We will value in the interconnection the upfront benefit for the Italian system, and that's something that will allow us to charge the Italian tariff for that component. But we believe that more and more there are going to be also financial investors interested into the asset interconnection if we can give enough visibility on the value created by the congestion charge, and so the revenues, the top line that the interconnection gives to the sponsor and the lenders. If we manage to create a stable financing package starting from the top line, we believe that especially now in current market conditions with a lot of liquidity, private players will be happy also to invest. And we believe that this message is very well received at the European level. Energy Union has a big pillar on interconnections. There are many PCIs that are related to interconnections, and together with our colleagues of Enel, we are promoting more lines connecting Italy with other countries.
Thank you. Final question to Cesi, then the floor can put a few questions, or even the Egyptian can put a few questions to your potential partner. Matteo, we heard about this morning from Mr. Shoaib the idea going from Egypt to Gibraltar. They are going through. We are fully aware that this is a vision, because it will be very hard today to go from Egypt to Spain because of the difficult infrastructure there. And I must say that Cesi always was really strong on saying, Roberto, if we want to join RES4MED, we want to push the case for South-South interconnection. Now, well before the connection between North and South, which will come later. So what is your vision now of Egypt being the potential hub of even an electrical point of view? And I also heard the news on an agency that the Saudi are thinking to make a cable between Egypt and Saudi to use better the zone, different hour zone. How do you see Egypt as a hub for electricity?
Well, I think Mr. De Fante said so. The world of energy is becoming, increasingly interconnected between countries, between zones, etc. And I think in the case of Egypt, and in the case where you have a high degree of renewables, I think interconnection with a neighboring country is not an option, but is becoming actually a must. Because this gives you additional flexibility into the system. Think of the fact that when you have no wind and no sun, you can back up or get electricity or import electricity through interconnection from neighbor countries that, for instance, might have an excess of combined cycles, for instance. So it gives more reliability and builds more reliability into the system. Now, on this particular issue, we've been working for FESD, which, as you know, is the financing arm of the Arab League, developing for the 17 countries of the Arab League the energy scenario from now to year 2030. And actually, the kickoff meeting was held in Cairo as well. So Cairo and Egypt was really at the center of the whole study. And the study was about optimizing the infrastructures, both on the electricity side in terms of transmission and on the gas side. So that means pipelines, LNGs, et cetera, in order to optimize the flow of energy within the various countries, some of which, as you know, are gas exporter, net gas exporters, others are net gas importers. And the study that we did carried out or made possible an optimization in terms of reducing the forecasted average price of electricity by 30%, saving in terms of optimization of infrastructures, making a saving on the capex of approximately 35 billion euros. Now, in particular, as far as Egypt is concerned, our study highlighted the possibility of several new links that might be built. For instance, a link between Egypt and Saudi Arabia, one between Egypt and Sudan, one with Egypt and Libya. By the way, the current interconnection between Egypt and Libya is at the moment allowing Libya, or at least a certain part of Libya, to be up and running even these days, because we all know that the situation, especially on the electricity, also on the electricity side in Libya, is quite problematic. With the country being fragmented, and also a link between Egypt and Jordan. On the gas side, to the contrary, also the opportunity of building a pipeline between Libya and Egypt was considered. And by the way, we are actually working with the Egypt transmission system operator and with the Saudi electricity company on the pre-feasibility and the basic engineering of the HVDC link between Saudi Arabia and Egypt, which will be a 3,000 megawatt connection. So to conclude, I think what our study highlighted was the fact that even in the short term, the interconnection of Egypt with the rest of the countries, of the neighbor countries, will bring benefits in terms of additional reliability and driving down the cost of electricity in Egypt. And in the second part of the plan, after the year 2020, 2025, that might also give the opportunity to Egypt to become a net exporter of energy and electricity to the other countries. So I think it's definitely definitely something that has to be considered. Of course, there is a lot that has to be done also on the governmental side to agree on the transfer pricing and the rules, etc., etc. So I would say that the hardware is or could be relatively easily put in place. We need to have good software to run that hardware and that infrastructure. Let me say so.
Thank you, Matteo. Any question for the floor? While you prepare the question, a last question to my president. Enel thinks big, you know that, and of course, even my time. Now we hear about this Eastern
Enel
corridor.
or Enel Green Power?
Enel Green Power, of course.
Oh, okay.
Enel Green Power. I also a card of Enel Green Power. It doesn't work anymore, but I still have it. I try to work, it doesn't work. Enel Green Power is looking very interesting not only to Egypt or South Africa, but what's in the middle, which is not trivial. And we hear that the idea with Irina as well and yourself to do, let's say, an Eastern corridor using as many as resources as possible. Mm-hmm. Now we hear that Kenya, of course, having the rift. I've used to study geology in school. They have geothermal, then there's a Tanzania other. So what is is a vision, or is really something you really, one by one, you really can do like the Lego and put the piece together and really go from South Africa to Egypt, not too far in time? Can I ask you this strategic, Napoleon-wise question?
I think it's a vision, and it can happen. Honestly, I think it's more doable than other plans that I've seen. As you know, I mean, we often go to these big events where there is the Chinese grid that the Chinese grid company that presents this world where there is big wind turbines in the North and South Pole. Solar all over the equator, and big transmission lines going all over the places.
That's a Cesi study.
Of course.
I mean, I honestly believe that they believe it, and it could happen tomorrow. I see things that not even 5 years ago were totally unthinkable of. I mean, I see the world where it's completely changing. I mean, there are now auctions just for dedicated to conventional energy, conventional power plants, which, I mean, if you think about it, not even 3 years ago was totally unthinkable. And it's not just happening in Europe where we see the problem, it's happening all over the places. I mean, in Brazil, just to give you an example, there are just auctions reserved to conventional power plants because wind, solar, and hydro wins it all. So if this is the world and it's changing at this speed, and honestly speaking, is very fast, I don't see why we shouldn't think big also in relation to transmission lines, especially because of the importance of that. We know that without transmission lines, there is no party, and I think we like parties, so especially when we're winning. But again, let's see. I think the world that we will see in 10 years is going to be extremely different from the world that we see now. And thanks to countries like Egypt, I think that's an important contribution to the world that is changing.
Okay. We have a few minutes, unless the public raise a question. Yes, of course. You challenge them, please. You challenge them, please.
Just asking Mr. Divini here, how do you see your acceptable selling cost with the results of the BO project which were announced yesterday?
Another question? No, well, I have to say that we just got these numbers and we will evaluate this number. Then it's very easy to say we are a different story. In fact, we are a different story because I think that we are comparing apple with carrots. So I think that we will have to detail. And as you know, within the new energy law, the Article 8 is expressly mentioning the projects that were in place before the execution of the law, so before the creation of this regulatory framework. Of course, this is, as Francesco was mentioning, is something that we have to learn anyhow. So I think that this signal is a very strong signal. It means that all the value chain has to be reconsidered. So we have to be as much as we can efficient in all the different aspects of the value chain. I think, of course, fully respect all the numbers that we saw. But again, I would say that different tip heights, different environmental impact assessment requirements, different. I think that is time, and so as you mentioned yesterday, when you have to be proactive at the same way. So I'm reverting to you the question now, meaning that I think that unique potential for Egypt, but we need to see now the big picture, meaning that we are going, let's assume in Gabalizet area. In Gabalizet area, we have different areas with different requirements. I think that we should have some homogeneous attitude vis-à-vis these areas. How is it that we have bird corridors and others do not have bird corridors? What does it mean that the white pelican, they will make like in a Formula 1 race? I don't know. We did it. We did it because we are there in order to be there. So you know that we have an industrial platform. So we are there in order to learn, to manage, and hopefully, inshallah, to provide energy to both eligible customer or as a backup to our industry, to our cement plants. So what I'm saying is that for sure, the numbers that we heard have to be studied and understood. But at the same time, I think that we have to make them comparable. Then I think as a very, very first impression, if we make them comparable, we are not that far from the feed-in tariff level, in my opinion. But I didn't see any numbers at the moment.
Matteo?
If I may add just one word, even when the auctions are giving such exceptional numbers, I mean, my suggestion would be do not be too anxious to celebrate the party. For instance, I think Paolo Franco showed us the $60 per kilowatt hour, per megawatt hour in Dubai. Well, actually, we are now working with DEWA, which is the utility of Dubai, just to help them integrating the renewables into the grid. So always remember that once you have those auctions, then renewables become a fact, will become pretty soon a reality into your grid. So prepare for what's next. That's my just single piece of advice.
Dr. Fante, a final statement on the role of Terna in these global views. You share the things will happen?
Yes, we believe that in 10 years it's going to be a very different energy world all across, and we are making very simple logical step of saying we know how to do transmission, we have strong know-how, we are ready to put this know-how at work together with Enel and the other major players, because we don't have a global presence, and it would be very difficult for us to establish one on our own. If we follow who's already a major player in many important countries, we think is the best way to put at work our expertise.
Agostino, you want to say 50 seconds? We have only a few minutes. Any final?
Yes, I completely agree. I think that the transmission, so the grid is very important. As a producer, we know all the difficulties that we had in the past and finally are solved, so no big headache anymore. So in Egypt, I think that there are a lot of things to do, of course, to increase the power. And we had look at the EETC, Egyptian Electricity Transmission Company, that published the program that they have. Is not clear on the website of the Ministry of Electricity what if they agree in this plan or not, because there is only the old one. So this is, let's say, a concern. Of course, there are some issue about the exchange rate between AGP, that is not Enel Green Power in this case, and let's say euro or the US or the dollar. So I mean, for a potential investor to be in Egypt, of course, there are a lot of things that we have to learn, and probably some of them you have to explain better. But this is, I mean, our work, and we are ready.
Don't forget that in Torino, where he comes from, they have the #2 Egyptian museum in the world. You should go to see. It's a wonderful museum, absolutely top, and they recently reopened. So after Cairo, you have to go to Torino. So maybe Mr. Rebaudengo will invite you to see your ancestors.
Yeah, will be a great pleasure. Just double the size 1 month ago, and with a lot of technology also. So I visited the Cairo one, and where there are, of course, a lot of things, but in Turin, I think that we did a good job with technology too.
Okay. Presidente, before lunch?
Before lunch, I need to, again, I think, congratulate with the Egyptian government for the results that they obtained yesterday. As a renewable operator, we will definitely have to go back, study, understand what happened. But definitely they achieved the result that they wanted, so cheap energy. They're talking about below $40 per megawatt hour. So this is the market reference at this point. Again, as a renewable operator, I think that it's a great thing because it puts pressure on us. But if you think it's $40 per megawatt hour with no incentive at all, puts definitely more pressure on the brown guys. So I think, again, the energy world that we will see in a few years is going to be different, and it's extremely, extremely exciting to be here today, because you see a revolution going on, and it's a positive revolution. So
a final comment from Mr. Elsobki, no? Give it microphone. You have 59 seconds before the pasta al dente.
The second round of the feed-in tariff definitely will have a different set of values if we announce a second round.
That's why we need to speed up with the first round.
Thank you. I'd like to thank my shareholder. Thank you very much for being here and for being so frank. We are on time, which is very, very rare in Italy, at least for me. We have lunch outside. You come back after 1 hour. We have the panel of financing people and the panel of industrial people, the real guys. So come back after lunch. Thank you so much.